Hi, everybody. My presentation will be on the 360-degree feedback intervention. Just a brief overview on the history of this intervention. There is no single developer of this method. Its roots can be traced back to World War I with the US military using an early type of 360-degree feedback to evaluate personnel for promotion and compensation. I say it's a type of 360-degree feedback intervention because it only used feedback from superiors and peers and did not gather information from low ranking personnel. On the other hand, the first organization to use a true form of 360-degree feedback was the German military in the 1930s. The information gathered was from superiors, peers, and subordinates alike in order to evaluate officers' performance. In the workplace, Esso Research and Engineering Company in the 1950s were considered to be the earliest known practitioners by implementing a Rate My Supervisor program where subordinates were asked to provide input on the strengths and weaknesses of their managers' managerial techniques. And lastly, one of the most notable instances of this intervention was its use by General Electric for restructuring efforts, where General Electric claimed it helped increase the efficiency of the organization as well as the shareholder value. So, what is this intervention? The 360 degree, also known as the multi source feedback system, is a method by which individuals receive feedback from a broad range of people with whom they work, and this includes peers, subordinates, supervisors, and customers. Generally, this method is used for individual intervention as well as individual development, but it can also be used for purposes such as performance appraisals and team interventions. So, the first study we're going to look at involves a sample of healthcare professionals focusing on continuous training of non-technical and transversal competencies. What do I mean by this? The study focused on certain traits, or behaviors I should say, such as teamwork, adaptability, flexibility, commitment, engagement, leadership skills, results orientation. The objective was to examine the behavioral change among health professionals following a training intervention. The 360-degree feedback model was used as the primary assessment within a quasi-experimental pre-test, post-test, where the supervisors, co-workers, and workers via self-report were the sources of information. The intervention was used to analyze the effect of the training intervention on behavioral change. What the results show were that when integrated with the training intervention, there was a statistically significant improvement for only one of the behaviors measured, which was results orientation. It is worth noting that it was a small significant difference. The second study sought to investigate the perceived usefulness of the 360-degree feedback model among leaders. The sample consisted of 8 new emergent leaders at an Australian university, and findings showed that their responses were split into 2 ways evenly among the sample. The first found that the feedback was not new and solely served the purpose of reinforcement and affirmation. On the other hand, the other half of the sample was able to gain insight from the feedback, which led to developmental strategies for change. Some mediating factors that the researchers found were that of the level of self-efficacy as well as the extent to which the environment supported self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief in the capacity to learn and develop, and the environment assisted in the level of self-efficacy. Skilled facilitation was also a factor, which has to do with presenting the feedback to the individual. The idea is that a better interpretation from the individual will lead to a better implementation of the feedback. The third article reviews the efficacy of 360-degree feedback models based on the inconsistent impact on behavior change and performance improvement. The article explains certain challenges that the model may have, as well as factors that heavily influence the outcome of the intervention. Some examples are feedback quality, organizational support, which has to do with the coaching and developmental climate of the organization, as well as credibility and trust, involving the individual's trust in the rater and or the process as a whole. The authors also provide ways to improve effectiveness using the feedback model along with another intervention. For instance, preparation and interpretation, similar to the skilled facilitation mentioned in the previous slide, where a better presented feedback can lead to a better interpretation and better implementation. Rater training will also have to do with the concept of skilled facilitation and a consistent and ongoing developmental program. So what are some pros of the multi-source feedback model? It can provide individuals with the opportunity for improvement. This is by providing new insight on behavior that can lead to behavioral change. Then we have increased validity and credibility. Since this is a multi-sourced feedback model, it allows for the strengths of each source, for instance, supervisor, peer, and a self-report, to compensate for the weaknesses of the other sources. Additionally, it can improve communication and trust. This is because it has the potential to open channels for honest dialogue, and this is helped by the anonymous aspect of the feedback. And lastly, it can promote a culture of improvement. The previous studies have mentioned how organizational support can be a influential factor in the outcome of the intervention. Therefore, by having a more supportive organization, it can lead to a better outcome of this model. On the other hand, let's look at some cons. One could be the ceiling effect, where the scores from raters are inflated, possibly based due to bias. So the scores by raters can be higher than expected, and this restricts the potential for measured improvements. Additionally, there's a limited scope of assessment. Based on the studies, we can see that it's not adequate for assessing certain traits, as well as specific technical competencies. There's the aspect of longitudinal maintenance. Therefore, the multi-source model has to be maintained over time. It can't be a one and done thing. There's also the potential for defensive reactions, where with a lack of radar training or proper feedback administration, employees can find the feedback to be critical and lead to feelings of defensiveness or denial. And lastly, there are cultural limitations. As mentioned previously, it requires an organizational culture that supports communication and learning, which is not always the case in said organizations. As a recommendation, I believe that the 360-degree model does have the potential to benefit any organization. However, its limitations should be taken into account when being used. Based on the evidence, it could have the most upside when used alongside another intervention and is made a part of the organization's procedures and cultures. Thank you.